Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Lazy Entrepreneur. I'm your host Sam Priestley and I'm here with my wife Emma.
Hello!
Today we're going to be talking about the 6 key skills that every entrepreneur needs. These are skills that you can develop and work on and that you don't necessarily need to have been born with. And they're also skills you can do whether you're an entrepreneur already or just aspire to be one day. And they're ones that I personally believe that while you can get by without them, your business is really going to suffer. And to get all meta on you, I also believe that the most important skill as an entrepreneur is knowing how to learn and how to improve your skills. So hopefully by focusing on these 6 key skills, we'll also be learning how to learn. All right, let's get started. So the first one, and something I'm notoriously bad at, and if you listen to my podcast or read my blog, you'll probably know that I'm bang on about this a bit too much, is management and leadership skills. It's something that I have kind of fallen into the sort of self-employment trap of by knowing that I'm not very good at it, so actively trying to build businesses and avoid having to have them. So do stuff that's relying on automation or technology and not on other people, or focusing on sort of highly skilled other companies to do stuff for me. So instead of hiring people in-house, finding a company who can take over a specific role in the business. And yeah, it's something that I do try quite hard to improve on, and I have done quite a few businesses where I've tried to hire people and manage them and have struggled. So it's something that's been a real sort of long-running battle with me.
Like the tech startup.
Like tech startup, we had a lot of employees. Coffee shop had quite a few employees, and then now I've kind of gone backwards and don't have any businesses that have any employees at all.
But you do have a management role in a lot of your businesses. So you still manage suppliers and have business relationships. They might not necessarily be full-time staff.
Yes. Managing your relationships with other businesses. So for instance, with a factory, you might develop your products, or with a supply chain, all that kind of stuff is important. Actually, kind of management and leadership is something that I have probably been trying to work on the whole of my life. I've always known I've not been very good at it. But as a student, I used to do things like I used to try and start a society or start a mini business in school. So I did, when I was in primary school, I started a school newspaper, started a couple of clubs. When I was in secondary school, I joined the cadet force, where you're kind of put in charge of other students. I think that leadership and management is something that a lot of people consider that you don't need to start working on until later in life. They kind of assume that you start off at the bottom of the ladder as an employee and then you'll get given a management role and then you'll kind of instantly be good at it, or that it's quite a natural skill, whereas it's not something that you learn. It's not like learn how to use an Excel spreadsheet. It's more of a soft skill. Some people are naturally better leaders than others, and some people are naturally better followers. I think that's true to some extent, but it doesn't mean it's not a skill that you can learn and get better at. I mean, there's hundreds of management books out there, and big corporations are constantly sending their people off to management schools to get better at it. The whole idea of doing something like an MBA is to get better at managing both people and businesses. And when you were working at PwC, you had to demonstrate your management abilities before you're allowed to even apply to become a manager.
Yeah, which is really difficult, because how do you manage someone when you're not a manager? You have to go out and find those opportunities. So whether it's starting your own initiative, like a little club, like I did, for the same colleagues that are in the same grade as me, or you put yourself forward within your team to run projects. But that's all about the relationship you've got with your boss and putting yourself forward. I wouldn't have got to manager if I would have just let things be and just not seeked out any opportunities, because ultimately I wouldn't have had the opportunity to manage someone, and then I wouldn't have been able to get to manager.
So So you can get experience with managing people without someone giving you a job as a manager.
Definitely.
Tell me some examples of that.
Well, like I just said, one of the things I did was set up a little group of marketing execs that would meet once a month to discuss issues we were having. So it could be something technical with one of the systems we were using. It could be some sort of training opportunity that one of us has found and would recommend. Or it could be we're having this real issue with someone in our team and we just wanted someone else impartial to talk about it that we didn't work with. But that was like a open forum for people to discuss, and I would control the topics and run it.
Yeah, so I think kind of what you're saying is that you don't need to have people underneath you in order to end up doing some management.
Yeah.
You can be in a group of peers and start something which you are kind of running and then managing kind of sideways. Yeah,
but that does take a bit of courage and also a bit of creativity. It's not just following what everyone else has done or doing around you.
Yeah, it's not just waiting for someone to give you the opportunity to do some management or leadership style stuff.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. And I actually think that the skill of sort of managing and leading people who are the same level as you or even more important than you is an even better skill. Like if you can do that, then you're going to have no trouble managing people who kind of it's their job to do what you tell them. And likewise, if you think that just because you've got a title that you're going to be able to tell people what to do and they're going to do it, it doesn't really work like that. I think that's something that especially as a child, when you think about stuff like a general in the army, you think people do what they tell them just because they're the general. Well, actually, that's not really the case. Being a good leader, being someone that people look up to and want to follow, or just a good manager, good at inspiring people, good at getting people to do what you want, is just as important. So you kind of talked about how you do that in a big corporation. You know, you set up something slightly different, like a outside of work project. There's also stuff like you can talk to your boss and take the lead on certain projects. Yeah. Which might include upwards managing, sort of partners, whatever, who are all involved, and you kind of take the role of managing that project and making sure it gets delivered. Well,
yeah, I was going to talk about upper management because for me, I had a lot of skills around digital marketing, and we're talking kind of 4 years ago now. So digital marketing was still quite new for someone like PwC. So me, like, kind of taking the lead on social media, email marketing, but general use of the website, it was even as basic as that, kind of carved out a bit of a role for me, and made me look more senior and more in control than I guess I was, because the people I was working with were a lot more senior to me, and they didn't have any of the skills that I did. So by teaching them about digital marketing, I kind of, I guess, boosted myself up.
Yeah. And if you don't have those opportunities, maybe you're not in that sort of business, there's always a bunch of stuff you can do outside of work. For instance, if you're in a local church, you can speak to them about running an event and take control of that. Get a bunch of volunteers to help you and manage the whole event. If you're at school, you could talk to the faculty about putting on again another sort of event or a specific project you could take the role on. You can do stuff like Duke of Edinburgh or Young Enterprise, things like that. If you're a student at university, you could join a society or create your own society and take the role of that. You were president of a couple of societies at university.
Yep.
Which again teaches you a bunch of skills which all kind of cross over to entrepreneurship. Another thing that I sometimes think of when I think about management and leadership is you organising our wedding. And there you had to manage a lot of different suppliers and juggle everyone together. I think kind of what I'm saying is that to be a good manager, you don't need to be in a management position.
Yeah.
You can sort of look at the skills that a good manager would have and then try and do stuff which will then teach you those skills and learn them. And if you limit them to smaller projects, then it doesn't really matter if you mess up or if you don't get on with the people you're managing, because it's just one small project.
Yeah.
Which means that you'll make all the mistakes early on. So by the time it comes for you to be hiring your first full-time employee, you'll kind of know what's looked for. You know who you can work with. You know the sort of person who might be more rebellious than you can handle, or whatever. All right, let's move on to the next one, which I'm calling financial literacy or accounting, which is something that a lot of people kind of know is important, but also think that they can outsource. I think it's terrible the number of small business owners I've met who have no idea whether their business is profitable or not.
That's crazy.
And especially stuff like coffee shops or little small shops, they don't really. And like sometimes you'll sit down and you'll look through their numbers and you'll realise that there's almost no way they can be profitable.
Yeah.
Because they haven't at any point decided to sit down and just put together a simple spreadsheet. How many customers do you need? How much money do you make per coffee you sell? Or whatever. What they do is they hire an accountant who kind of looks at their numbers for half an hour every 3 months or even once a year, and then kind of gives them a little bit of advice. That's not good enough. You need to have a really good grasp of what is going on in your business. Now that doesn't mean you need to know all the terms. I mean, Richard Branson famously didn't know the difference between net and gross until he was in his 50s.
Oh, that's a great fact.
And yeah, he's one of the greatest entrepreneurs around. But that doesn't mean he didn't know what makes a business profitable. He knew kind of logically in a common sense of have a look at how much you're spending, have a look at how much you're coming in, take the two away and you've got your profit.
Yeah.
How to use a simple spreadsheet. You know, you don't need to be using pivot tables or macros or any of this kind of stuff. Simply plus or minuses to work out what it is that your business needs to do. It's something that people do neglect, and we don't really get taught it at school, I don't think. We kind of get taught maths, but we don't really get taught how to apply it to stuff like this. So again, I thought a little bit about how you can learn these skills without actually diving in and starting a business to begin with. I think the most obvious one is to think about your own finances. Have a look at your income, your expenses. If you were a business, would you be profitable? If someone was to invest in you, would it be a worthwhile investment?
This is the most you thing I've ever heard.
Oh, it is. I love this sort of stuff. It's so geeky, but I love it. You know, what would you have to do in order to, what are the risks around you as a business? If you lost your job, would that mean your business is now bankrupt, or could it survive a little bit? How much is it saving? All that kind of stuff. There's loads of other things you could do. In the last section, we talked about doing one-off projects and events. Again, you know, if you're running a pot roast at your local church, do the finances for it. How much does it cost for all the ingredients? How many people do you need in order to cover those costs? How much are you going to make? That sort of thing. Community events, stuff to do with school, young enterprise, things like that. You're running a society at university. You've got to make the books balance. You've got to do all the maths. You've got to make sure it's actually not losing money. Or you can there's even video games you can play, or board games, which give you a little bit of an idea of how to balance the books, how to make money. If you can't really do any of that, think about maybe offering to help some friends who are already doing things like this. Let's say you've done your own finances, maybe talk to a friend who knows kind of struggling and offer to help them with that. Think of them like a business, offer to go through their finances, maybe create a budget, look at where they can save a bit of money, what the best thing they could do. That way you can help someone as well as also helping yourself to learn these skills. There's also charities you can volunteer at which do a similar thing and give sort of financial literacy classes. Again, it's not something you need to be. You don't need a maths degree in order to do this. You don't need an accounting degree. You just need to be able to know whether your business is going to make some money.
Yeah.
Alright, on to the next one. I haven't really got a good title for this, so I'm going to call it Fear of Rejection. And in this, I'm going to put down a bunch of different things, from dealing with confrontation, having difficult conversations, cold calling, cold approaching, all that kind of thing. Sales.
Well, it's putting yourself out there, isn't it?
putting yourself out there.
Instead of being in a big company where you've got lots of colleagues and you're kind of protected, potentially you're going out there on your own.
Yeah, and I'm kind of including anything in here where you're gonna either end up in a confrontation or you're gonna face rejection. You're gonna be turned down a lot. You're gonna be told no a lot, or people might just get downright angry or aggressive at you.
Yeah.
Which is something, again, that we don't really learn at school, I don't think. You can follow through life a very ABC pattern where you don't really have to deal with this too much. But it is very important, especially if you're running your own business. A lot of businesses struggle to get sales, and part of that is that they want to only be approaching and selling to people if there's a good chance they're going to say yes.
Yeah.
Whereas you're going to struggle to grow that much. I really struggle with this with my blog. In fact, I kind of stopped marketing my blog because I didn't like putting it out there in front of a bunch of people and then getting mean comments from a few people.
Yeah.
Even though 8 out of 10 really appreciated the content I was putting forward, 2 out of 10 or 1 out of 10 or maybe even less than that would say mean things or criticise it, which I struggle with. But if you're going to do anything entrepreneurial, which is different out of the box, you're going to get rejection, you're going to face confrontation, you're going to have people telling you what you're doing is rubbish and a bad idea.
Definitely.
It kind of crosses over a little bit with our first one, leadership, in the confrontation, dealing with how do you tell off bad employees, how do you let people go, how do you fire them, and it's not easy. And especially if you're quite an empathic person, if you're the sort of person who wants people to like you, which I am.
I think most people are, aren't they?
I think most people are. That's true.
Well, I guess with every business, you're opening it up to negative feedback and criticism. Like, for example, with the gin business, there could be customers that don't like the taste of our gin. It's not something we want to hear, but ultimately it is part of having a business. We haven't made a product that every single person in the world is going to love. Yeah. And that's the point.
Oh, well, with the gym business is a classic example where you're going round door to door and trying to sell it person to person to bars.
And restaurants, yeah.
A lot of them are going to say no.
Yeah.
And that is a terrifying thought for many people, including me. Like walking into somewhere, apprentice style, with a product that you're trying to sell to someone who might well not want it.
Yeah. Whereas in reality, when you meet people, when I meet people and give them a sample of our gin in bars and restaurants, everyone's usually quite pleased to see me, and actually they love the fact that we're giving them a free mini bottle of gin, and actually it kind of breaks the ice. It's the bit afterwards where you follow up several times over email and phone to then I've only had it a few times, but for a manager to then say, oh no, we don't like the taste of the gin, or no, we cannot stock any more gins, and then you get that rejection. So it's almost worse because I've worked even harder for it. It isn't a rejection straight off.
So how can you learn this as a skill? Well, I think if you're a student or you don't have a full-time job, it's quite an easy solution. You get a job or a part-time role where you learn these skills, either as a salesperson or you can even there's hundreds of commission-based only sales jobs around. It's a lot more difficult to get a job where they pay you an hourly wage and hope you're going to be worth it than to get a job where they pay you nothing, but it's just based on you selling their products. And then it's also a lot more on you, and it's much more, the better you get at sales and at approaching people and at cold calling or whatever, the more money you'll make, the more sales you get. I always thought that if I could go, when in year 11 we everyone kind of does a week or two work experience, and I went and did something kind of pointless. I think I worked at a primary school or something like that. I've always thought that probably the best thing I could have done would be to go work at a call centre, cold calling people. It'd be horrendous, but it would only be for 2 weeks, and making hundreds of calls a day like that would definitely get you over that hump of fear. Something I do, well, I don't do it anymore, but I did for quite a few years, was I volunteered as a police officer. I thought if I can deal with arresting people, if I can deal with
the general public,
the general
shouting
public
at you.
shouting at you, if I can deal with people fighting, I could deal with anything. You know, what's the worst that can happen if you go into a boardroom and pitch your idea? They're going to tell you no, it's rubbish. What's the worst that can happen if you're a police officer and you're trying to arrest someone? Well, they can attack you. The scales are completely different. So that's something and again, it's still something I'm not very good at, but it's something I'm working on and put quite a bit of effort into improving. And it's something that you should be working on and you should be trying to improve. Get yourself out of that comfort zone.
Well, I think with me, with the cold calling, it's something I had to do as part of my first job in London. And it wasn't easy to do to start with. It's not a natural skill for me, but I did it so many times that it did become natural. The fear was removed, and actually I'm quite happy talking to people on the phone. It doesn't worry me because I had to do it so many times. So I think practice and doing something that you're scared of, it could be going for a job interview. Doing it multiple times makes it a lot easier. Yeah. And if you've got if you're working in a big corporation, it could simply be going over and speaking to the important people. Yeah. If you're on a grad scheme, going over talking to some important partners. Yeah. Because most people don't have the guts to do it. It's going to make you stand out. It's also going to help you get over that fear of the unknown. And the more you do
it, anxiety,
the more you realise that you're just talking to another person. They're not a monster.
Yeah.
You can have a personable conversation with them.
Yeah. Definitely. All right, now we're going to go to something quite different. Written skills. I agree. It's something that I'm naturally very bad at. I'm not a very good writer.
I don't agree with you.
And that's only because you've only known me since I've put a lot of effort into getting better at it. Yeah. But it's definitely something that, you know, at school I would always choose subjects that didn't involve any writing at all. Maths, that sort of thing. Computer science. Where it would always be number answers rather than having to write an essay. Yeah. But really, written skills are an incredibly important skill, whatever you're doing. If you're going to work at Google, you're still going to have to write reports on what you've done. You're still going to have to give feedback to people. You're still going to have to comment your code or whatever. If you're a mathematician, a statistician, a scientist, you're still going to have to write up reports.
Or presentations.
Presentations, whatever. The same as if you're an entrepreneur, you're still going to have to write emails, do customer service, write your business plan, do your grant applications, write your press releases, write your business procedures and your instructions for your employees.
Yeah, and all the marketing.
And you've got to do all your marketing. It is if you avoid writing, then you're never going to get good at it, and the gap between you and everyone else is just going to get wider and wider and wider. Yeah, it is a really important skill. So how do you get better at it? Well, you don't need to be like a fiction author. You don't need to be really eloquent. You just need to be, not make spelling mistakes. You need to be able to get your thoughts down onto paper. You need to not be afraid of writing 1,000 words or 2,000 words. So how do you do that? Well, practice is really the only thing. Mm-hmm. You can take courses. Taking something like a journalism course just in your spare time, like a day a week, is quite useful because it teaches you certain skills. With journalism, they're having to churn out a lot of quantity very quickly. You learn sort of how to write, basically, how to write
and take notes.
Yeah.
And edit.
Yeah. One thing I did is I started a blog. That was something I did to try and get better at writing. Actually, at A level, I took history rather than something else, even though I knew it was pretty much impossible for me to get an A in it. I ended up getting a B, which was definitely as good as I could have got. I spent a lot of work on that, just because I thought it would teach me how to write, how to get my ideas down on paper. Whereas the other ones I did, physics and maths, didn't need any of that.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that on your computer science degree that you did have to do essays as part of the degree. It wasn't all
Yeah, we
numbers.
did, and everyone was terrible at it.
Yeah. But I think the fact that you had to do it was quite interesting.
Yeah.
They recognised that
Yeah.
you're all, on average, not going to be very good at writing.
Yeah.
So you should be forced to do it.
Yeah. There are a lot of excuses people have for not being good at writing. You've got one, that you're dyslexic.
Yeah.
And also, when you started working a corporate job, you purposely didn't tell anyone that you were dyslexic at the time, because you thought that it would hold you back.
Yeah.
It would be seen as an excuse, and in fact, and therefore you had to overcompensate by spending a lot more time on the written parts. And I remember maybe a couple of years ago we found your original dyslexia report.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure you would have, if you took it again now, whether you would be classed as dyslexic. Not because you're not dyslexic, but because you've spent a lot of time learning the skills to actually be able to write coherently and get around it.
Yeah, and there were a lot of like comprehension issues that I was having. It wasn't just actually getting words to paper, but yeah, a lot of the comprehension stuff I definitely got over.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean it's not harder for you than other people. It just means that you've had to put a lot more work into it.
Yeah.
But you still got better at it.
Yeah.
And that's true for everyone. Just because you're bad at something, if you avoid it, you're not going to get better.
Yeah.
And just because you're bad at something doesn't mean you can't get better. Like, you might never be, you might never be a proper author or whatever, but you can be good enough. It just takes more work. Alright, moving on. Here's another one which I find particularly challenging, and it's self-discipline. Again, this is all of this stuff. Some people are naturally good at, some people are naturally worse at, and some people are obviously very self-disciplined and very good at making themselves do stuff. But other people aren't. Other people are naturally lazy. Like me.
It's interesting that you say you're naturally lazy, isn't it? Because a lot of people in our lives, our friends and family, think you're really productive. I think particularly once they read your monthly report and they realise how many different businesses you're juggling and how many things you've achieved that month. Yeah.
It's people judge me on my output, not on my day-to-day. Yeah. Whereas you see my day-to-day life, and you see just how little I actually do.
See how many video games you play. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I find self-discipline very difficult.
Yeah, but I think that one of the big things with you is that actually you spend a lot of time thinking. And you might be doing another activity while you're thinking, but that is part of your work. Whereas when I was in my corporate jobs, we weren't given time to think. You're kind of expected to do that when you're outside work, and really you don't want to be thinking about work all the time. But that is a big part of your business and your success.
Definitely. And actually, that is what we'll be moving on to in the next section. Oh. It's a balance, right? It's a balance. You do need self-discipline, and self-discipline is something that you can learn. One thing I like to do is set challenges for myself. I'll set myself a time-limited challenge. If it's going on forever, I won't do it. So something that doesn't work for me is setting daily habits, saying every morning I'm going to do this forever. That just doesn't work with me. I'll stop doing it within like 2 days. Yeah. What does work with me is saying, for the next month, I'm going to do this. And it's a challenge, and it's something I can win. I'm quite competitive, so the idea of winning something, beating myself, even if that's it, works quite well with me. And then, so that's kind of my internal motivation, my competitive side. I also don't like letting people down, so I will often tell people what my challenge is, so they can hold me accountable to it.
Yeah, they can ask how it's going.
They can ask how it's going, or I'll write about it on the blog. So for me, the way I practice self-discipline, and actually which then translates into how I get certain things done, is by setting challenges and then making sure I do them, announcing them and then doing them. There's other ways of helping to learn discipline. I think taking a difficult sport or hobby on is another example of that, especially if you're young and, or actually it doesn't matter whether you're young or not.
No.
I do a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the moment. That is something that it's going to take me a very long time to get really good at.
And there's lots of different ages there.
And there's lots of different ages in it. It's something I can hopefully do forever.
Yep.
But actually getting good at it takes a lot of work and requires discipline because it's something hard. But I think people think about it more at school because there's a lot more opportunities to start a new hobby, a new sport. And then if you end up doing that properly and you reach a good level of it throughout your kind of school career, along the way you will have learned a lot of self-discipline.
Yeah. So whether it's learning an instrument or...
Yeah, learning to play chess.
Yeah.
Learning to juggle. That's probably a really bad example. There's other things you can do outside this which to help practice self-discipline, which should also benefit you by creating something productive for you. So one example I've put down is find a dead time in your day, which could be the time you're sat on a train commuting. It could be your 2 hours of TV you watch every night. It could be a time where you're not actually producing something, and you can set yourself as a challenge for maybe a month or two to use that time to do something else. Write a book, learn a language, take a journalism course to get better at writing, whatever it might be. Or you can use that as maybe for once a month you can focus on a different one of these skills, find a bit of dead time and use that dead time to really focus on these 6 skills that we're talking about today. Alright, let's move on to the final one, which I'm calling creativity and out-of-the-box thinking. And I've put this one last because it's really difficult to quantify. I think that people just assume that your creativity or your the ideas you come up with are just, some people are just more creative than others.
Yeah.
It's
something
not,
you're born with.
Something you're born with. It's not something you can train. I obviously disagree. It does come more naturally to some people than others, but it is something you can cultivate. So for a long time I did this 10 ideas a day practice, where I would pick a subject and come up with 10 ideas of it. I first heard it from James Altucher, and that worked really well for me. So I'd pick a subject such as ways to improve sales for our gin, and I'd come up with 10 ideas. I then kind of developed that into more targeted stuff. So if I had a meeting that day, I'd think of 10 ideas of stuff I could say at a meeting that would be useful, something, or 10 ideas for things that were relevant towards whatever the meeting was about, but would be good points.
It's interesting with that because it wasn't all about business, was it? Sometimes you'd pick 10 ideas that were something in your personal life. So it was what was really prominent, what were you thinking about at that point of time?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of going deeper into a subject. So it could be something like, your birthday's coming up, I've got to come up with 10 ideas for presents for you.
Exactly.
As opposed to just being like, oh, she'd like that, and picking the first one that came out your brain. Because often your best inspiration comes at idea 7, 8 or 9.
Yeah.
It's something that then goes deeper. So your first idea might be, I want to start a gin business. Then you're like, well, I'll come up with 10 ideas for how I can find a supplier. I'll come up with 10 ideas for what sort of branding I would like. 10 ideas for how to publicity stunts that would get into newspapers. So that kind of 10 ideas is one of the ways I really push my creativity and out-the-box thinking. Robert Rodriguez, who's a film director who I really like, what he does is he splits between creative stuff but all with a target. So what he'll do, he'll get his actors, say someone who's acting a part in his film, to at one point they'll be given a guitar. If they can't play the guitar, they're told, oh, sort of play the feeling of your character, and then next I'll have to draw the character, or next I'll have to write a short story about the character.
Yeah.
It's all kind of different things that sort of tug on different parts of your brain and hopefully bring forth that creativity.
Yeah.
So how do you go about doing this as, say, a student or as an employee? Well, as a student, there's quite a lot of opportunities to stuff like this. You know, as at school, you've got things like Young Enterprise. At university, you've got sort of entrepreneurship societies. You've got events like pitch nights, where you kind of pitch a business plan, you get better at your presentation skills, and also coming up with good ideas.
And listening to other people's as well, and giving them feedback.
Exactly, listening to other people's, seeing how other people think when they're trying to think outside the box and think of creative, unusual stuff. As an employee, I've already spoken about thinking about meetings and preparing for that, thinking about a bunch of ideas you can contribute towards a meeting. What I find is that whenever I go to a meeting, most people don't think about it at all until they're in the room. And then they kind of, if it's a brainstorming meeting, they do their brainstorming in the meeting.
Yeah.
Whereas what I try and do is I try and do my brainstorming before the meeting, so I've got a lot to contribute already. And then I don't tell anyone that's what I've done. Everyone just thinks I'm a genius because I'm coming up with loads of great ideas. Little do they know, I spent a good 45 minutes earlier in the day thinking through them all.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I've been in some of those meetings.
I think that's a really good way of making yourself stand out a bit at work.
Yeah.
If, let's say you're going into a meeting, having a lot to contribute for that meeting because you've put a bit of time into it already, does help you stand out a lot. I would probably argue that if you're looking for a promotion, standing out in meetings is one of the best ways to do that, more than the work you're doing outside of it.
Yeah.
A lot of people say meetings are dead time and they can't wait to get out. Well, actually, meetings are often the time where you're most going to impress and you're most going to demonstrate what you've produced. Something else that I think about with this, and that kind of ties into sort of fear of rejection, is just giving ideas to your bosses or higher up people in the company. So thinking, say, 10 ideas for ways they can improve a certain product, or they can market their business better, or they can solve a problem that you know the business is happening.
Yeah. And
then just emailing it or speaking to your boss or whatever, picking the best couple of ideas and then just sending it to maybe the CEO of the company or something like that. Chances are they'll just ignore it. But if you do it a few times, you'll soon become known as that kind of, I don't know,
someone to go and bounce ideas off, someone that you respect their opinion.
Yeah, or someone who thinks independently.
Yeah. You
might be thought of as that annoying geek who's always thinking about how the company can improve its bottom line, but actually that's a good thing. It helps you stand out from everyone else. They might not think you're cool, but they'll think you're a good employee. And it will also help improve your creativity and stuff as well. And that's it. That's the 6. Let's go through them quickly again. We've got management and leadership. We've got accounting, financial literacy. We've got fear of rejection. We've got written skills. We've got self-discipline. And then we've got creativity and out-the-box thinking. Obviously, there's hundreds of other skills out there. You know, technical know-how, building websites and things like that. Operations and logistics. Actual vocational things around your business. So like, how exactly do you make gin? How do you, whatever it is, how do you program a web app?
How do you make a cup of coffee?
How do you make a cup of coffee? But all those kind of things you can learn on the job.
Yeah.
And they're quite specific, and then I think they're less important than the 6 we've spoken about.
Yeah, you can learn as you go along.
You can learn as you go along, and if you learn how to learn, that stuff will become easier. But those 6 skills are key, and I think that if you're lacking in any of them, then your business is really going to suffer. It doesn't mean you'll be a failure, it doesn't mean it won't succeed, but it's never going to reach the potential it could do. Now, there is a slight loophole to getting round a real deficiency in one of these things.
Mm.
And that is to partner with someone who has them, someone who has the complementary skills that you don't. And that's where we're going to leave it today. Anything to add, Emma?
No, I don't think so.
Good. If you wanted to listen to a bit more about how do you find a partner and is it right to get a partner for your business, then we've got another episode on that.
Yeah.
So listen to that. And as always, if you've got any questions for us or any suggestions for how we can improve the podcast, please email me at hello@samprecy.com. Goodbye.
Bye.